How's it going, indie hunters? Thanks for stopping into I Dream of Indie. Fatal Flora here, coming at you with a new review, and this time I'll be checking out the title Minoria by Bomb Service Games and published by Danjin Entertainment. Though this title has been around on Steam for about a year or so, this is a new release on PS4, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox One, available now for $19.99. Console fans rejoice. A spiritual successor to the Momodora series, Minoria is a combat exploration platformer, commonly known as a Metroidvania, although that's a term I'm not personally too fond of. That's a whole separate video. Minoria sees the visuals shift to 2.5D cel-shaded characters with beautiful hand-painted backgrounds, but keeps the same fresh combat as the Momodora games, with less emphasis on platforming overall. A forbidden ceremony launched the holy kingdom of Ramezia into a large-scale conflict against witchcraft. Weeks later, the ruling princesses were kidnapped and held captive by the heretics. Desperate measures were taken as expeditions of nuns departed towards the capital. The church proclaims these sisters to be the only ones able to purify the witch threat. Set forth with Sisters Semilla and Fran, missionaries in the church's service on their journey to thwart the witch's ceremony and protect the common folk. The world is absolutely gorgeous, and the visuals constantly had me in awe as I love cel shading and the gothic aesthetic they chose here. The religious themes were great, and in a way it almost felt like an alternate universe in the era of witch hunts where magic does exist and the witches decided to fight back. The combat was decently smooth and felt very close to a Souls-like in terms of patience. It pays off to take it slow, as even the lowest level enemies can do a great deal of damage, taking almost a third of your health bar in one swipe. They were able to dodge and parry for great counter damage. The dodge overall felt a little clumsy as the distance wasn't great, and it was very easy to roll into enemies if they were clustered together. Paired with your tiny health bar and the high damage even from contact with enemies, this wasn't exactly ideal for an evasive maneuver. You can find various swords scattered throughout the game, each with different combos and charged attacks, as well as a variety of incense which serves several purposes. There are two categories of incense, active and passive. Active incense includes things such as healing, projectiles, magic attacks, and temporary stat boosts, while passive incense will activate buffs like temporary invulnerability after healing. There's a ton of incense to find, so keep that smoke coming. If you run out of incense or you're low on health, you can rest at ink bottles to record your story thus far and get a full restore on health and consumables. There's also an area unbeknownst to the witches called the library, where you can take a breather and share information with your fellow sisters, or buy incense with silver coins found hidden around the world in Unbreakables. Boasting a good variety of enemies and bosses, the challenge unfortunately didn't lie too heavily in the gameplay so much as the limitations with health and damage. Although you gain experience from killing enemies, it would have been nice to have stats to improve to give my character some kind of boost. I found though that the leveling system didn't really ever make that much of a noticeable difference in the entirety of my time playing. Unless there was something obvious in the menu that I missed entirely, the game never explicitly told me I could improve my stats individually. I was absolutely enchanted by Minoria from start to finish, with a few small complaints which at the end of the day I could live with to finish out the story. The map is a standard Metroidvania style, though I do wish it was more clear about locked doors, as Minoria doesn't operate like a typical Metroidvania, where new areas are usually locked behind new abilities. Rather, new areas here are literally behind locked doors for which you need a physical key. This was another way it felt inspired by Souls, as passages often looped back to connect with shortcuts to more advanced areas. Though without the map being clearly marked, I found myself running in circles pretty often. I already mentioned the dodge being a little off, but I think that's more the hitboxes in general, as attacks didn't feel quite as solid as they have in the past. For example, in Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight, the most recent Momodora entry by Bomb Service. Complaints aside, the characters and background are phenomenal, the story was super interesting, and the dark classical soundtrack really struck a chord and had me in a spell when the gameplay got intense. I think any fans of Metroidvania games will enjoy this one, along with Dark Souls fans who may invade indie territory from time to time, and again, obviously fans of Bomb Service's prior Momodora series. The gameplay definitely won't push you to your limits like some other adventure platformers, but if you want a gorgeous indie game with an interesting story, you can end your witch hunt and catch Minoria on Steam, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch today. Let me know in the comments below if you thought Minoria was quite as magical as I did. As always, thanks for stopping in. We appreciate you coming to I Dream of Indie, where we're doing our best to bring a voice to the voiceless in gaming. We couldn't do it without you, our viewers and supporters. We'd appreciate it if you would subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to check out the details below if you'd like to further support us. And thanks again for stopping in.